Imagine logging into a forum account that maybe you haven't touched in a couple years and finding out that it's worth some money. Wouldn't be a bad deal for 5 seconds it costs to actually make that account. It's not worth money for what you did just because it exists, because it's old. Think about that for a minute. You create an account on a hacking forum out of curiosity. Maybe you poke around. Maybe you don't even post anything. Fast forward a few years, and someone's offering to actually buy that login because of its age. That's kind of where we're at now. Now, some of you watching probably already have accounts on places like BreachForums, while other subscribers might not even know what BreachForums is. And that's cool. You don't have to for this story to actually make sense. It's fine. So the one thing you need to ask yourself, though, is if you knew that there was a resale market for accounts on forums like these, would you have changed your behavior? If you could rewind and I gave you an opportunity to make as many accounts as you could, would you do it? What if you get like Monero and you knew no one would ever know? Nothing illegal with it. So would you be more likely to sign up and just let the account sit, knowing that it might actually be valuable later? And if so, what does that mean for the ecosystem in itself? Question I ask is, would we accidentally encourage more people to enter these spaces under the guise of a future profit under this model? Tell me in the comments what you think. Now, keep that in mind. We're going to switch gears now. A Swiss cybersecurity firm called Prodraft has basically launched a covert, which is really overt because it's public, account buying program under the label Sell Your Source. This isn't just some marketing ploy by a cybersecurity firm. This is an actual direct intelligence collection campaign that's aimed at these cybersecurity forums, basically. Forums that millions of dollars and things like ransomware and credential dumps and data leaks and access to all that stuff is for sale there. The premise is pretty simple. Prodraft basically wants to buy your account on there, not your data, not your wallet, but rather your identity on sites like XSS and then RAM4U and exploit.n and verified. And not just any identity that you have either. They want what they call aged accounts, which just predate 2022 because they're trusted accounts, which really makes no sense if you understand the premise of how these things work. But old logins with reputation posts and private messages and accounts and kind of all that stuff that you get at the door. Of course, by making this public, they literally just put a whole bunch of doubt in people's minds as to if that person that you knew from back in 2022 is still that person or if it's some analyst. So if you ever talk to anybody online for more than an hour, the chances are likely that you probably recognize some things in that person that were fairly unique to that specific individual. And if that was the case, and you did recognize those things, then it's also logical to assume that if that individual's personality just completely changed overnight, you'd probably notice, right? It's just human nature to see these kind of things. So this is especially true if you spend years talking to this specific individual over time. And in any case, getting back to Prodraft, they said that they'll pay extra for things like mod access or admin level accounts. And in exchange, they promise crypto, basically. Monero, Bitcoin. I don't know about the latter, but they say that they don't want to buy any accounts that are actually tied to real criminal activity. But dude, how are you going to know? You were a cyber criminal. You could delete your posts. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Unless they have copies of it, but whatever. Hugbunter, for example, by this logic, could be making a killing off this announcement because recently Dread purged something like 100,000 accounts. And these are all like 2018 accounts. Like these are relatively old accounts. So if it's something that's applicable to not just cybersecurity markets, like Dread could be doing really well in a little bit. But by old accounts, I mean accounts that predate 2022. But there's a whole nother layer here. And I would say, like, who's to say that these accounts aren't going to be manufactured in mass from the start? Now that these morons actually announced their plans to the entire world, there could very easily be tons of accounts that were crafted by insiders, then postmarked with contrived histories to look legitimate, really. With like money on the table for admin level access, what's to stop someone from granting elevated privileges to like sleeper accounts just to flip it later? An admin that's on one of these sites, what's preventing them from doing that, right? Like, just imagine if you were an admin on one of these sites and you can easily create users, you can insert users, you can insert when they were created, you can, all that you can change. I think one of the first things I would do for relatively easy money would be to just create 300 accounts, right? Give them all mod privileges, don't make them public, and create various actions in their histories to make them look kind of legitimate. Slowly, over time, bring a few on here and there, let them get acclimated, let people see them, and you could easily sell them for whatever they're buying them for. And then you sell 10, you ban 5 because you're an admin. You can do that. And you're selling them under it all, so no one ever knows. Like, you could continue doing this under these alt accounts basically forever because no one actually knows that it's you, the admin, right? That's actually making these accounts and selling them. Meanwhile, the cybersecurity firm is basically funding the forum for you. So that's pretty cool. If they're paying for these accounts in crypto, like they said, there's no way to go back on the transactions. It's not like they can undo it once they actually have the transaction done and they've sent the crypto to you. Like, there's no recourse in that case. So Prodraft claims that it's doing this to try and gain visibility into adversarial infrastructure and communities. Okay. But again, the consequences very well could be much bigger than they actually calculated or anticipated. And the second a threat actor learns this program actually exists, it changes the landscape for them in some pretty dynamic ways. Like, if we actually think about it, how do someone you're talking to on a forum today is the same person that you were talking to, say, 6 months ago? I mean, not fully sure, right? Like, you don't know their fingerprints. You can't like really substantiate that. So there would be some giveaways, perhaps like linguistics or like other things that you might actually be able to tell. But overall, there really isn't any way of solidly confirming it beyond the shadow of a doubt. So let's answer this in the comments. How would you go about figuring this out? I'd be curious to hear that. For me, it would be really real world trust, right? That's a lot harder to fake. Offsite validation is a whole other thing, right? Like, think of shared memories. If only person A and person B know that there was an incident or a certain thing or an inside joke, a nickname, for example, or a phrase from years back, that actually becomes your litmus test. If that particular threat actor likes to hit a particular type of server, for example, comment on how good they are at hitting a different type of server that they really didn't hit, or if they remember that time that XYZ happened in Shoutbox, knowing that they will remember it. There's no doubt that maybe you guys have talked about it multiple times or something. I mean, if their answers don't match after a few of those, you could assume that the account's compromised. Verification needs to actually be human, unpredictable, and fairly unique. Not only that, but like you have to keep in mind that whoever is selling the actual account might not also be selling all the other alternate accounts that actually go along with that account. For example, right? Like if me and you, for example, like always talk on session, but we also talk on BreachForums, and you sell your BreachForums account, then a week later message me and tell me that the other account on BreachForums is not actually yours, then that account that they paid for is burnt. And the person who got paid, they already got paid, so what do they care, right? My point is that with moves like this, whether from private firms or alphabet letter agencies, always have kind of like these ancillary side orders of effect that end up happening. They have these unintended consequences that take place. They force adversaries, in this case, the threat actors, to actually adapt. And that's actually kind of a good thing for them. Adaptation is definitely a fundamental principle in survival, just in general, right? Like what'll happen is their infosec will get tighter, their OPSEC will get tighter, might have account vetting, that might become a norm. Suddenly everyone has a secret handshake, or there's maybe a new group on Telegram. It's BreachForums, probably a new group on Telegram or some, nonsense like that. I don't use Matrix, is beyond me, but whatever. Every time law enforcement or a private entity flexes, the cyber criminals take notes, they talk, and they discuss countermeasures. Kind of like exactly what we're doing right here. But Prodraft's very active advertising its intentions on different sites ironically signals to the entire underground that infiltration is not something that's like some theoretical, maybe it'll happen thing, but it's actually active. And on top of that, since everyone knows that the cybersecurity company won't actually commit felonies, and it's not even buying accounts that have committed felonies, which I wouldn't trust that, but like it definitely won't commit felonies. It might be required to actually show that you commit felonies prior to making an account on the site. Like their whole goal of learning about infrastructure to try to mitigate, it could actually potentially backfire really bad on them. And that brings us to the bigger picture. And there's a belief of sorts that buying access gives you visibility, but that's not how these things or these spaces really work. Accounts can be staged, right? Histories absolutely can be fabricated. That's not beyond the scope of an admin's abilities with their forum. And if someone knows that you're actually paying for it, it's not just the buyers who get smart. The sellers get smart too. So you might end up paying top dollar for an account that's been built entirely to deceive you, or one that will last a week and not exist. It's meant to die. None of this really guarantees you any real access, right? Like even worse, if threat actors catch wind of this and decide to start, say, setting traps, right? Selling accounts loaded with disinformation or fake info in them, masquerading as insights. In that case, the security company just paid to get manipulated. Imagine acting on in infiltration only to find out that the entire trail was basically synthetic. It was designed to mislead you and take money out of your pocket. And at the same time, you've effectively helped the adversary that you're actually trying to infiltrate. Like, not only did you aid them by supplying them with money, but you also forced them into a position where they had to update like their entire threat model to compensate for a completely new angle that you're coming at them from, basically. You can bet that once this news actually fully encompasses and totally gets around, some communities will absolutely start watching for things like sudden changes in user behavior. So if your writing style shifts, or if you stop engaging like you used to engage, that'll be enough to rate you as suspicious. Like, boom, you have a red flag now. And we saw that today with the meth head that was on Dread. People will notice, is the point. Like, not necessarily because something's off, but because once the possibility of infiltration enters into their minds, they're just going to start seeing it everywhere, right? Like, it's a psychological loop. It's known as the Barter-Meinhof phenomenon, which once someone becomes aware of something, they actually begin noticing it constantly everywhere, even if it's not actually happening, right? Like, fear rewires perception for that person. And from there, like, every interaction becomes a test. For the other person, it's like a test of sanity, but Stylometry is also a huge part of that. It's basically the forensic analysis of how people write things like word choice, sentence structure, punctuation style, writing quirks, even rhythm, right? All that stuff goes into it. Mind you, it doesn't stop at actual writing. Posting times, response delays, tonality, emojis, all that kind of stuff create behavioral fingerprints of sorts. And once people are primed to expect infiltration, they start obsessing over these signals, right? Like, they will actively hunt for inconsistencies that confirm the threat, whether it's real or not. So, like, this could be someone who's like completely legit and still trip every single alarm in the room just by doing something that's not even really a thing, like replying too fast or logging in at the wrong time or typing a little bit different than they usually do. And now suddenly you're off. And it's like people basically start to fixate on things that were never really red flags before. Say you post an hour early than like you normally do. It's like people are like, oh, time zone changes. You use a different phrase, and people are like, oh, it's a new operator. It's like, oh, you took too long to respond. And it's like people are like, oh, they're buying time to craft a believable reply. It's just, that's how thin the ice really is. And paranoia definitely doesn't only distort reality. In the long run, with stuff like this, it can just replace it totally, right? Once people believe infiltration is happening, they'll bend every detail to try and fit that narrative. And the more they watch, the more they think that they're actually seeing, which fake confirms what they're not seeing. Like, it's just, it's a vicious cycle. Others might take it a step further, though. They start doing things like verifying identity through shared context, like what we were talking about earlier. So maybe not passwords or keys or stuff like that. We were talking about before this whole idea of shared context, actual lived knowledge, something you did say in 2020, a phrase that only people like a few in your life maybe know about, right? Could be a shared mistake, right? Like that kind of thing becomes a really passive test. Fail it and you're flagged quietly, but permanently. Forums might also evolve technically. You might see advancements in how they deal with things to be able to combat that. There might be more ephemeral access, rotating keys, temporary logins, or even secondary checks outside the forum. Maybe escrow validation, offsite handshakes, or weekly prove you're a felon challenges. The point is that Prodraft's move will force innovation, not submission, because that's not how this works. It's equally as true in seeing darknet markets respond to threats. In the end, all this really does is push adversaries into doing things like hardening their actual networks. It improves their tradecraft. It makes them more intelligent, not less. Prodraft isn't just infiltrating forums. Basically, what they're doing unknowingly is funding the next wave of counterintelligence training for these threat actors. And for that, they should thank you. So, yeah, I mean, welcome to the age of account-based infiltration. So before you actually start trusting anyone you used to know, ask yourself, are they still them? Any case, thank you for watching to the end. As always, I'll see you in the next video.